Shooting film has a lot of great things about it. The fact that you have to slow down, the analog feel where you have to load the film and actually advance it manually, it's very nostalgic. It's very refreshing. However, there are some drawbacks to shooting film. So let's talk about that and a great alternative to shooting film photography. All right, we talked a little bit about the good things about shooting film photography. Now, some of the cons about shooting film is the cost. That's going to be the biggest thing. Film isn't cheap. Now, depending on what you get, so 35 millimeter film come in 24 to 36 exposures. The 120 format is 8 to 12 or 16 exposures. And depending on what you get, the Ilford or the Portra, the Kodak Gold Plus or Color Plus, Kodak Gold, all are varying prices, but they get pretty expensive. Not to mention, once you're done shooting the film, you have to get it developed. So you have to develop the negative. So that's another cost. And then next step in the process is if you're going to get a digital print, or I'm sorry, just a print, an actual physical print, or paper, canvas, metal, like whatever you decide, that's the next cost that's going to be on top of. So the alternative to shooting film is to shoot your regular digital camera that you have and then use a program called Dehancer. Dehancer is a digital film emulation program or a plugin that works with Lightroom, Photoshop, Affinity, Capture One, and they have basically a emulation of all, or as of this recording, 63 film stock that is available to use. Now, before we dive any deeper, I do want to be transparent and tell you that they reached out to me. I just happened to be on vacation, so I didn't respond right away. But when I did read the email, they had said that they had watched my YouTube videos and that they liked the aesthetics of my films or my videos. So I took a couple days to respond because I didn't know who they were. I had no idea. So I looked them up, went on the website, kind of did the history and learned about the company itself and how they started in 2013 and the evolution to today. And I was very impressed. And they have a free version where you can actually try out the program to see if it's for you. Now, before I responded back to them, I did all that and I was amazed at the results that were coming out. So I said, yes, please, I would love to do a review of Dehancer. So they did send out a demo for me to try out and review, but they want an actual honest review. So they have no input in what I say or my opinion. They have not watched this video before anybody else. So here we are. And also, they were kind enough to offer a promo code for you that if you end up wanting to use this program, you can use the promo code that's going to be in the description down below and get 10% off all their products with the exception of the iOS app, the iOS app subscription. I will be covering the iOS app towards the end of the video, so stay tuned because it's very similar to the desktop, but there are a couple little tweaks. But regardless, I think what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about Dehancer, the tools that I have in them, and then we're going to dive in and we're going to develop a couple of my pictures, one landscape, one portrait, to let you see how it works, the user interface, and a couple of my critiques. All right, let's dive in here. Really quick, I'm going to show you the quick guide that they have on their website to help you set up your computer and your software, whether you're using Lightroom, Lightroom, Photoshop, Capture One. So if you go here to the website, and I will put a link on this in the description below, so it's easier for you guys to get to it. But as you can see here on the quick guide, it basically gives you the step-by-step on how to set up your computer as well as your software so you can get the best results out of your processing. Now, as of this recording, they only work in sRGB color space. And I know they are working on the ability to work in a wider space, but for right now, that's a color space. They also are not able to process or develop in anything other than JPEG, TIFF, and I believe PMG, but I'm not quite sure. So they are recommending a workflow that will give you the best results in the end. All right, so that is a quick look at the guide. Now let's get in here and edit a couple pictures. All right, let's get into the edit. So we're going to start here in Lightroom. And before we get into this, I'm going to put on the screen here the recommended settings for Lightroom and or the other editing software. Okay, so here we have the first image we're going to develop or process. So we're going to do one landscape and one portrait. So this landscape here, I took, I don't know, a couple of years ago. It was a overcast day. It was very rainy, so it was more in the kind of bluish tone. So let's go here on the recommended settings. So the first one here, the color profile where it says Adobe Color, we're going to change that to standard. We're going to go down here to exposure. We're going to do a -1. So -1 stop exposure. Contrast is -40. Your blacks are going to be +60. So we're reducing the contrast because we are going to add contrast in Dehancer. Okay, next we go into the tone curve. Make sure your tone curve is on linear. Next we go to detail, 0 sharpening, 0 noise reduction. And now the file is ready to be sent over to Dehancer. Now, I believe I mentioned it before, but Dehancer only works either with TIFF or JPEGs and possibly PMGs. I'm not quite sure. So what is going to happen is I have set it up to send over as a TIFF. So we go to, we'll right click, edit in, Dehancer. And as you can see, it'll edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. It'll send it as a TIFF, sRGB, 16-bit, resolution 240. That really doesn't matter too much, either 240 or 300. And compression, none. So once I hit edit, Lightroom will produce a TIFF and then send it over to Dehancer. I'm going to take everything off here. All right, so this is the user interface. So on the left side here, you have your panel. So this is the button if you want more real estate after you choose your film profile. So you have more real estate and see what you're doing while you're editing with the right side here, and we'll get to that in just a second. All right, so here you have your profiles. Turn them on here real quick. So these are all your film profiles, and as of this recording, as I said before, you have 63 of them. That is a lot to choose from. Oops, let's go back to Dehancer. You can sort them out here from your favorites. So this little heart icon here is where if you choose a profile you like, for instance, Kodak Gold 200 is one of mine. As you can see, it's favorited there. If you go to favorites, then everything that you have favorited before will be on here, and that way it's a quick and easy process. Go back to all films. Well, while we're here, you can see you can filter out by color negatives. Motion picture is basically the 6 profiles they have that was very commonly used in film back in the day. Color positive, black and white, instant, exotic, cross. So you have a lot to choose from. Here on the push-pull, this is basically where it gives you 1 color changes and 2 slight exposure corrections. So as I said, this was more of a cool day color-wise, but we're not going to go with the Kodak Gold. We're actually going to go, let's reset this, turn this back on, and here we go. This is what I was looking for. The Fujichrome Velvia. It has more of a cooler tone feel to it. So let's do the push-pull. Let's see where we go from here. So you can see as we push it, it kind of warms it up a little bit and brings up the exposure. So we're going to go into the cool side about right there. Okay. So that's your left side basically. Actually, you also have presets. Now, the presets, most of them will be from the Dehancer team themselves. And you can here filter out all presets. You can actually do your own presets. Here I've got one for the Kodak Portra 400. It's one of my favorite film emulations to use. The Dehancer team, and then of course you can import any kind of presets you want. All right, so that is the left side. So coming up here on the top, so this is your settings. So this would be where if about, I would say once every couple weeks, maybe once a month, go in here and do the update film profiles. And what that'll do is any kind of changes, updates to profiles or new film emulations that come up, this is where it will download it. And as you can see right here, there are 63 film emulations. Okay. Next one is the history, which will back up to your original and actually to the last one used. So you can see when I was talking about the Kodak Gold. This is your undo, so it'll go back to whatever you had last. And then this here will reset it back to original, how it came in from Lightroom. Up top here, this is your clipping. When you turn it on, it will show you where your shadows, your blacks, and your whites are clipping. This next one here is your histogram, and this shows it as an RGB, not just Luma. So you can see right here, this gray is your Luma, then your red channel, green channel, blue channels, and you can see whether they're clipping or not. Turn that off. Then here you have your zoom, and it goes to 1:1 or 100%. You can also, the shortcut for it is just double click on your mouse. And then this is your before and after. So this is how it came in from Lightroom, and this is where we're at up to this point. Keyboard shortcut for this is your space bar. Just hold it in, press and hold. You have your before, let go, you have your after. Now there are, the quick reference guide does have the shortcut, the keyboard shortcut keys on it. So if you reference that, study it. For me, I love it because it helps me expedite or go through the develop or processing faster. All right, cancel. If you hit cancel, it will negate any changes that you've done. It'll go back to Lightroom and you'll just have that TIFF from Lightroom with your Lightroom settings. If you hit OK, that means it is done, and whatever processing you've done will calculate it, send it back to Lightroom, and it'll be in Lightroom with those changes. Now, this is where I have my first and probably biggest constructive criticism, is that once you hit OK and it sends it back to Lightroom, that's it. You're completely done. You can't double click and go back to it and tweak maybe the colors or the highlights or, you know, one little aspect of it. You actually have to go and redo the entire edit again. Now, for me, I like efficiency. As much as I like editing and being out here in post-processing, I would much rather be out in the field, taking photographs, making photographs, enjoying nature. So the less that I can be in here, the more I can be out enjoying nature and doing my photography. So with that, that would be a huge help to kind of go through the process quicker and be more efficient in getting something to, for instance, if I'm trying to make this photograph, for instance, be closer to another photograph that I've already developed, I'd have to start all over, and therefore not much of efficiency there. All right, moving on. So let's go in here. Source, this is where you're going to use to change your exposure as well as your tint and or temperature. A little cooler there. That's about right. Then your tint. So your cyan or your magenta, I don't like either one of those. Actually, that looks a little green now. So let's go about 3-ish. There we go. Bring in just a little bit of magenta. Defringing, there isn't a whole lot of light in here because it was an overcast day, so not much on defringe there, or basically chromatic aberration. Your film developer is your contrast and your gamma corrections, which is basically your kind of midtones. So let's add some contrast and then make the midtones slightly brighter. Color separation, basically just in small amounts desaturates your image. While I'm doing this, so this would be my next constructive criticism. As I said, I like to work fast, therefore keyboard shortcuts and that kind of stuff. This will be my next constructive criticism, is once I finish with the section, once I click on the next section, it would be great if that first one collapses. So like Lightroom has the solo mode, so I can go through, and as I'm going through my workflow, each tab will close once I open the next one. And for me, it might be something small, but for me, because I don't want to have to, once all these are open, as you can see, it gets pretty long. And then if, say, I do something with print and then it throws off my exposure, then I have to scroll back up to the top. And that just basically, it's kind of wasted time, where I would like to have that time back again, like I said, so I can be out in nature photographing. So let's close these up. I am currently on film compression. So film compression basically limits and or constricts your exposure, white points, black points, which because this was a very low contrast day, there's not going to be much impact on it. You can see a little bit right here in this section, but I actually like it with off. So right here, you would reset the entire tab. If you make a change in one of the sliders and you don't like it and you want to reset just that particular slider, you go here on the button, double click with your mouse, and then it resets just that slider. All right, expand. This is your black point, white point. So this is where your major contrast will come from. So basically like using the tone curves and using the S curve. So brighten that up just a little bit, bring down the black point. And there we go. And that's where the majority of the contrast will come. All right, print. This is where if you decide to print on one of these profiles, these are the, I don't want to misspeak, but basically the print profiles for these actual papers. So they've done a lot of study and a lot of research on how the inks interact with the paper and have done a digital film emulation as to what it would come out if you were to actually print with these papers. As you can see right here, the clipping point is turned on. Sorry. So back to this. So they have done it where if you want to, so linear is basically if you want to keep it digital, and then, so I like Kodak Endura glossy paper here. It would change the exposure slightly. It was just a little too dark for me. Tonal contrast, so all this would be towards the print. So I don't know if I'm ever going to print it, but if I do, I want to make sure it's ready to go. All right, color head is basically your HSL sliders or your hue, saturation, luminance. I don't really mess with this too much, but as you can see here, this will either go yellow or blue, and then so on and so forth. And then here is more for your shadows, midtones, highlights, so you can actually be more detailed in what you want to do with it. So I'll turn that off. Then you have film grain. Now this is, for me, one of the best I have seen as far as film grain in a digital image. Let's zoom in here. Oh, I have a dust spot right there. All right, so as you can see here, it's part of the image. It's not a filter that just is laid on and it simulates, I guess for a lack of a better word, the actual film grain in the image. Like this is integrated as part of the image. It looks beautiful and it doesn't look like it's fake, basically. So you have these profiles here you can use for the film grain, or if for whatever reason you don't like any of them, you can go in here and customize it to your heart's content. Like this is absolutely wonderful. Like I can't believe that a program has these capabilities. All right, let's go back to where I was at. 500 is great for this image here. All right, halation. I don't use halation a whole lot, but this is basically the phenomenon where in film photography, when light passes through the film and hits the back part of the film and then reflects or refracts, I'm not quite sure which is the correct term, but what it does is it creates this kind of reddish orange halo around your highlights or light sources. So as you can see here, it actually does a pretty good job of emulating that halation. Let's change it to 16 millimeter. You can see it's a little less than the 8. Let's go to the 35, and it's even less than the 16. Whoa, that's a super 16. All right, and like the film grain, you can customize it. But like I said, I don't like halation. Here's the bloom. So bloom is kind of the same effect. However, the way the process is different. So with bloom, it's more of kind of an optical thing. So when the light passes through the lens, because back in the day, glass wasn't as great as it is today, there was a lot of imperfections, and then the bloom or the glow would be created, and the same thing around your highlights or your light sources. Now for this particular image, I do like the bloom. It kind of gives you that ethereal feel, and it goes with the theme for this image here. And I like the Super 35 there, so we'll keep that. All right, so the next three I hardly ever, if at all, ever use. So film damage is basically scratches and dust and any imperfections that would have been in the film itself. And you have a couple to choose from here, as well as customize. And if, like here I have the full frame, but you don't like the way that they're placed, you can hit the refresh button here and it'll actually change where the location of the damage is. And then of course, like before, you can customize it. And as you can see, it has a lot of sliders to really customize the look. So we'll turn that on. Oops, not film grain, film damage. Here we go. Overscan. So overscan is nothing more than putting holes, sprocket holes, like it actually looks like a film strip. And then they have different types from Super 8 all the way to Panavision, and it basically just changes the size of the sprocket holes and the aspect ratios. But once again, I don't use these, so turn that off. And then lastly, the vignette. I shouldn't say I don't use the vignette. I actually do use the vignette. Let's turn it on so we can see it. Now, for me, because I can't really tell a whole lot, I have to bring down the feather to see where the vignette starts and stops. And we can change the size of it. So about right there. Then the aspect ratio will turn it from a circle to an oval, and depending on where you go, it'll either be horizontal or vertical oval. So reset that, drop the exposure slightly, and then bring the feather up to 100%. And that's how I use the vignette. All right, and we are done with this image, and I love it. This is absolutely gorgeous. All right, so once we hit OK, it'll save all those changes and then send it back to Lightroom. And we have here the after and the before. So let's go here, do a comparison. So the right side is from Lightroom, and then that's before, and then the after being in Dehancer. All right, let's do one more. We'll do the portrait. And then we'll go through our steps again. So we'll go up here, basic. So in the profile, change it from color to standard. Go to exposure, -1. Contrast, -40. Your blacks up to 60. Then we'll go to tone curve, make sure it's on linear. So if it's on anything else, medium contrast, strong contrast, not good. We want it linear. Then we go to detail, 0 on sharpening, 0 on luminance, which is the denoise, or I'm sorry, noise reduction. All right, and this is ready to be sent over. Right click, edit, and Dehancer. This will pop up. And like I said back in the quick guide section, read through the guide, set up your computer and your Lightroom, Photoshop, Capture One, whatever, with the recommended settings that they have. That way, at the end, after you develop your or process your image, you'll have the best results possible. All right, so here we are back in. And this one I want to use, so I reset everything here. And for this one, I want to use the Kodak Gold 200, which to be quicker, let's go to my favorites. I have it say here. All right, push pull. So even though this was kind of a cooler day, not necessarily a cooler day because the sun was out, but because we were in the woods, it was cooler as far as light temperature. So that looks good there. All right, onward we go. All right, to the right side and right here. Let's get some more real estate, just like that. Exposure, bring up the exposure. Temperature. So basically the white balance. That looks good there. Tint, I'm not gonna mess with. Defringe or chromatic aberration. Like I said, there was no direct sunlight hitting anything, so that shouldn't be a problem. Film developer, we are going to kick up the boost, or I'm sorry, the contrast. That looks good there. Let's make gamma corrections. Not a whole lot there, so I'm trying to get the midtones to a higher exposure. All right, compression. So as you can see, the compression just kind of limits these highlights, which to me, they kind of look fake. So let's see if we change the impact, basically how much it affects the photo. And you can see on her shirt, the white point right now, I'm experimenting with a slider. I'm not liking the results, so we'll do that. Tonal range, you can see it will limit the exposure or back to the original. So let's go at about, I think 8, 9-ish looks good right there. Color density won't mess with. Expand, like I said, this is where your S curves in your tone in Lightroom or Capture One, this is where you get your S curve from. And you can see I have my clipping points turned on. So I have a couple things clipping there. There we go. So I'm not too worried about crushing the blacks. It's clipping the highlights, because when you print on anything, whether it's canvas, photo paper, acrylic, metal, whatever the case may be, especially for photo paper, when you clip those highlights, those whites are going to be pure white, and then what happens is when you print, it's going to be nothing but photo paper. There's going to be absolutely no detail in there, so we don't really want that. All right, to print, of course, my Kodak Endura. Exposure, a little too dark. Tonal contrast. So I'm trying to get it where she is not basically the same tone as the background, so she stands out. All right, and the color head, remember that's the HSL sliders, which I don't use. Film grain, we'll go to my favorite one. Actually, I think 500 might be too much. I think the 250 was good. So we'll go to the ISO 250. Halation I don't use. Bloom, let's turn off the clipping points here. Bloom's not too bad. It actually brightens up her and a little bit of the shadows in the background. All right, so let's do the vignette. And it was on my last setting, which I actually don't mind it. Let's take off the feather here. Let's decrease the size just a little bit. There we go. Lower the exposure slightly. Feather out. So here's my next constructive criticism, and this really isn't a make or break, but what I like about, say, like Luminar Neo, I believe Luminar AI had it as well, but they had a slider on there for your inner light. So inside the vignette, I could brighten it up slightly and basically make the subject pop out. That would be great if we could add that slider in there, because like I said, especially for my portraits, because I want to make sure that my subject stands out from the background. But there it is. There's the portrait edit, or develop, since we are trying to make a film out of a digital image here. All right, and then we're done. So we hit OK. Let's get the before and after. We are. Right side is before, that is with just the Lightroom settings. Left side is the after, and this is all the Dehancer edits. All right, so all in all, I really enjoy using Dehancer. This is something that I will definitely use for my portrait and landscape projects that are coming up. So like I said, I tried this out on their free trial version to see if it's something that I would use in my toolbox, and it absolutely is. So, all right, next up, let's talk about the iOS app subscription, the iOS app version. All right, guys, we're back, and now we're going to use I'm going to use my phone, but you can actually use your iPad as well. So as of this recording right now, they only have the iOS app. I'm not quite sure. I'm assuming they will have an Android version soon, but as of this recording, it's only on the iOS, and it's something new. So let's get started here. All right, so we are here, hit Dehancer, and I'm gonna go back to my daughter's senior pictures. We're gonna use this one. So you can see the layout here is a little different, but still kind of similar to the desktop plugin. So you have here here's the actual presets. So you can see right down here where it says by Dehancer team. So these are the presets that the Dehancer engineers and photographers have set up. We go to the edit. This is where you have your film profiles and where you have your tabs here. So to choose your film source, you go here, all films, favorites, color negatives. You can see it's pretty much the same as your desktop version. So let's go to color negative. I don't know if my favorites, no, they don't transfer here. So color negative, and I want my Portra. Like I said, I love my Kodak Portra 400, especially for portraits. And we are going to make this look like Portra 400. There we go. All right. So we got the film exposure. We're going to go down just a tad. We're going to leave the temperature alone, the tint as well. Like I said, I like these pastel colors that the Portra 400 comes up with. Developer, same thing. You have your boost, your contrast, and your gamma corrections, which is kind of your midtones. It's just a slight correction. It doesn't do big pushes like your exposure compensation does. There, color contrast boost. I do like contrast, but not too much. Compression. Impact is basically the amount, how much you want it to adjust what you're changing. All right, expand and see the white point here. I kind of want, well, we'll put a vignette, but kind of the bottom edge there, I want to darken it out. Print. You can see you love. Yeah, I love it. I love my Endura, my Kodak Endura. Not really going to change. Maybe a little bit right here. Change exposure there. Tonal contrast. We'll leave it alone. And just like on your desktop version, all you got to do is just double click on the slider button there, and it'll take it back to reset. Not going to change the HSL or the hue, saturation, luminance sliders basically. This is more the hue than anything else. So we're not going to do any of that. Film grain, we are going to take this to, we won't take it that far, because it was kind of bright in there. We'll leave it at the 35 millimeter 250. I'm liking that. No halation. I don't want any halation. Bloom I do want. This would be, yep, there we go. This would be good for a bloom. My daughter and her puppy there. There we go. That's a good one. I'm not going to do any film damage or any overscan. There we go. All right, and then once you finish, just like in any Apple device where you have the square with the arrow, that is to export or share. So I want to save it to my gallery. And you can see successfully exported, and it's now in my photos. So if I go to my photos, there it is. So that's the after and before. All right, so that is it for the Dehancer Film Emulation plugin and app. They are a great company. Like I said, they reached out to me before I decided to work with them. I researched, I tried the product, and like I said, I absolutely love it. They are trying to continue to improve their products. So I stand behind a company that will do that and will take in an honest review and critiques of how to make their product better. So if you've enjoyed this video and you've gotten some value out of it, please hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. And until the next one, we'll see you.